So I think they're about to get started. Um, Sorry for the break. How you guys all doing?
If it goes off, just push this button until it stops. Okay. Hold it. Yeah.
Josh talking about the potential of the smoke alarm going off.
We should
They were
open
making food and then
and maybe not put the
it became
thing that's so high.
a waft of smoke.
The heat. Okay. Okay, whatever. You know how to cook. Okay, bye. What? You know how to cook. Bye.
It's like my new roommate Kyle only knows how to cook on high.
Oh yeah.
I've never seen him.
All he knows how to cook when he's high.
Yep. All good.
He's first.
So
You're first, right?
Josh and Jackson's a tie. Josh is basically dead at this point in terms of the tournament now. Given that Noah's won 5 games, so Josh cannot rely on any 1-2 shenanigan, 1-2 tie shenanigans.
Dynamic duo.
Jackson just needs to win a set. It pretty much is that simple. I guess he can lose the set if Noah loses 6 games in a row to Sid. But I don't think that's something that you can count on. Sid actually needs to win some of the games. He doesn't need to come back in the set necessarily, but he needs to win some of the games pretty badly. He can't. If he, yeah. It may not actually matter. Like Sid needs to win 3 games to have any shot, I think.
No more crazy plays now.
Like what?
Interactable.
Oh. That's
The finalists are not decided at all, Puneet. They're pretty far from being decided. Yeah. Even Noah's not guaranteed. Yeah. I can try to explain it to a little bit. If Jackson wins the set, he's basically in. If Noah wins any of the next 3 games, he's in. It looks like we're getting started. So Josh with kind of an awkward but decent rack.
I should see my hands.
like the chips and bevs.
It's one of those classic short versus long openings. You can play short with something like Lum. You can play long with something like Mules. And both plays are pretty much identical. Lum takes a few more hooks, which makes it maybe a little bit. I would normally say a little bit worse, but given the actual exact leave, probably not, because DENR with the U in that spot is one of the best possible 4-tile leaves. Certainly the best one that doesn't have an S. There's lots and lots of 8s that hit bingos, so the hooks are actually kind of neutral because of that. There aren't that many of them either. It's mostly just A, G. Certainly others like P, but those matter a little bit less. Yeah, versus Mule, which is obviously going to have the same parallel problems, leaves a little bit worse. NR, but you are likely to see parallels, so yeah. Either play is fine. This is pretty much a break-even point when it comes to the 2 short versus long. Just mostly depends on stylistic decisions. Josh does like to go with Mule vertically, of course, because it's Josh. And at this point, it's just a part of his identity to open vertically. Jackson with 2 eyes and the Z. He can parallel. He doesn't necessarily have to, but he can parallel. That's certainly a reasonable option. Um, so again, its primary objective: get rid of a Z, get rid of an I. Jackson has ZD lighting up as rack. He may consider attacking the S on if he has 2 of them, which I believe he does. A little bit hard to see off screen, but pretty sure that those are 2 S's on Jackson's rack. And if so, using the second S for 5 points does make some sense. Although you can also hold on to it. Also, just zit makes sense. He does go with Z. A little bit interesting. Josh has a bingo. I expect that's going to be played very shortly. Oh, it's ZTRG. My bad. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, so his options were between that and Tiz. I got it. Tiz is a play I have a lot of trouble seeing just in general. Rating comes down. Oh. And nice score. Oh, Iron Risen started streaming. Is he streaming Scrabble, guys, or I had no idea. You are seeing the drawbacks of the G, because again, the G is pretty much inhibiting Jackson from doing much of anything good. I assume something like Sig is going to come down, but could be a bunch of plays that come down that are perfectly reasonable. Dig would make some sense as well. Could play Jed, but that kills the line, and the E is very, very valuable here, especially since there's an open eye that might actually stay there. And the main this column over here, this E is pretty useful. So I don't expect Jed to come down, even though it's probably the best points.
So
Jackson's rack is great. Other options are things like dirge as overlaps. Yeah, I think it's more likely to be either Gid or Dig. Probably either Dig or Sig. I think I might end up playing Sig, but I think that there are other options that are reasonable as well. As we see Josh with the second blank. Looking already pretty dire for Jackson. Going to be pretty hard for him to actually come back here, given the second blank. But yeah, the main objective here, just balance and try to get rid of the G. And hold on to as many tiles as you can. Definitely the E and the R and the S are keeps, so yeah. Yes, Josh is palming the other. Because people are just, yeah. Sorry for the dead noise. There's just not much a lot to talk about in this position. It's just pretty straightforward. Jackson just thinking about dropping the G here. I think he's permuting all of the draws. So probably if you want to fish the G, you would just fish it here, create a second C spot. Maybe you could fish it here too, but I don't think that's what he's thinking about. There are a lot of bingos that go through CDEIRS, but a lot of them aren't going to play, or a lot of them aren't going to score particularly well. It is worth going through all the tiles to see whether your lead is good or not. Again, the quick approach that I tend to use is just going BINGO, see how many of the bingos. So if he fishes the G, he is
Sid.
scribed, he has...
Sid! They're watching the stream. Can you... Sorry. Can you just give him my headphones and make sure he's not talking? I don't know if he's able to understand that.
Like he's talking about the stream?
He might, like, just want to make sure.
Yeah, if they wanted to have these headphones.
They're pausing the game because the other people who are eating have the stream in the background. So hopefully, Josh probably knows Jackson's entire rack at this point. Josh's hearing is extremely good, so Josh can hear things that Jackson and the rest of us probably can't. So very possible Josh inadvertently knows everything I've been saying, which would be Jackson's entire rack. Jackson does elect to just fish. He is going to bingo a fair amount here, but again, he is missing out on 15, 20 more points if you wanted it with a lead that's almost as good. So this is kind of an interesting position. The highest equity play, according to the computer, is not going to be played. It's Hag. But playing Hag with your opponent having played one tile off for 6 points is just not feasible at all. The S hook is just too damaging, especially on a board that generally has no S hooks. So I expect you're going to be seeing something else here. Most likely something that's going to block 8s and lead the 7s. So maybe something like him would make some sense. Him sets up your A as well, which is nice. No real reason to assume that that's not there, but it blocks the I, N, and D as floaters, so it's the main reason to make that play. Human also might make some sense. Probably prefer him a little bit over that. But the U is a really bad tile, and him does keep the U, so that might be a reason why not to do that. AMU, also kind of a similar theme. HIR isn't that great for bingos, but it does accomplish the same sort of objectives. Between the S spot that was created and the LI spot underneath and the AD spot and column F, you're just not going to block all the 7s. So if you are going to block in any sort of way, you want to focus on decreasing score, and you're focusing on blocking 8s and just making sure that all the 7s are live, but all the 8s or most of the 8s are dead. Basically, it's kind of like eliminating duplicates or allowing duplicates. If somebody has 7s lines, and creating and allowing more 7s lines doesn't really matter, but blocking 8s lines does. So just like you don't mind having 2 of the same letter floating out in space, you don't really mind having lots and lots of 7s lines and even creating more of them if your opponent is fishing. Back in the 80s, that actually was a much more prevalent strategy, just to block floaters at all costs. And I don't recommend blocking it at all costs. There need to be reasons, but here there are reasons. Making sure that there are a minimal number of 8s. when your opponent is fishing. Because that's the only way you're realistically going to stop any sizable number of bingos. And most of the plays score a similar amount. Like I said, they're going to score between 20, I guess 15 and 25 points. So, and the higher scoring plays are going to keep worse leaves. So, positionally, that's pretty much all you're considering. Positionally, yes, you would like to get rid of the H and the U. The H being an okay bingo tile, but actually not a particularly good one. It's serviceable, especially you have T's and S's, neither of which Josh has, or C's. But I wouldn't consider the H a good bingo tile. It's a good bingo tile for a 4-point tile. It's certainly better than the F and the W. But even Josh's despised G is a better bingo tile than the H is. Josh plays human, which again was one of the reasonable options. So I think that's a pretty good play. Gets rid of the H, gets rid of the U, and blocks some of the floaters, which is the main themes of this position. So not 100% sure. I think that's an O that Jackson drew. So it's an O. I don't know if he drew a bingo. I don't think he did. So he's gonna want to just bounce and keep the lines open. Has some different plays to do that. Play Hick, Audic, although Audic does close a bit. You don't want to particularly close things. DO leaves a little bit too much. You do want to threaten things, but probably not to that degree.
25.
Jackson does play Audic. High scoring play, still keeps a very good lead. Yeah, Discord and Scodier are both CSW. Josh almost has the word Europagia. Eventually, the first thing that stands out, you want to get rid of some vowels. So OUAI are 4 vowels. Y is essentially a vowel, so 5 vowels. So first thing that jumps out is usually playing YOU off, if you can in some capacity. Pretty difficult to do that on this board. I guess you can play YOU for 11 and open the Y in space. But that's a bit scary for all sorts of reasons. Could just get rid of the Y and score. So again, last turn you couldn't play Hag, but you can play Yag. That would make some sense. Yod also would make some sense. He has Yag lined up on the board. He could play Haya, but it's just too risky. Keeping your leave a little bit worse may not seem ideal when you have the blank, but this isn't a board where he's trying to bingo immediately. If you bingo one turn later, it's actually okay. He takes it back and does play Yacht instead. Basically equivalent options here, I think. The one slight downside, I guess, to no, they're basically equivalent plays. It's just kind of a matter of personal preference. Jackson with the second S, but with a W. So getting rid of the W pronto is important. So since you're trying to get rid of W, and particularly WO, first thing you want to look at when you look at Josh's play, he played YO, he played an A, so what are the odds he has a T? Because if he doesn't have a T, you want to play this for sure, because it kind of forces his movement, makes him block. But he may have one. I don't see a way to completely rule it out of his range yet. Play before is human. Human's pretty unlikely, but he could have drawn one last turn, which is the problem. Yeah, I don't think you can really rule a T out of his range, so I'm a little bit more reluctant to do that. Could just do Resao. Woe is also in the same spot. You also want to think about I, but he might not have an I. How many I's does he have in his range here? Y-O-A-I. It's possible. I mean, we could see that Josh clearly had one, but if not, then you could consider playing Whis in that spot as well, and leaving the Ewis hook.
134 to 82.
Yeah.
Jackson's electing to. Oh, he has an E on his rack. No, it's the right. It's the correct rack. Okay. Yeah, Jackson just elects to drop WO. Second S still has some utility, not nearly as much as usual, obviously, but he does elect to play WO. He may be able to figure out that Josh didn't have a T. I didn't really do that analysis justice the way that it need to be done. Josh has a share of bingos. There's some reasons. One of them is consonant rack balance. The other one is you don't want to necessarily let your opponent know that you have an S. And also, if you do miss, the S may have some value scoring in the future. So there are some reasons to keep the second S. At the end of the day, three vowels, three consonants, two vowels is still better than 2 and 2. And if you do miss, then having the S as a scoring option available is still relevant. So those are some of the reasons that you do want to keep the S. I'm not saying that those necessarily overrule the extra 4 points, but they are still positive reasons to keep the S. Josh plays a bingo. I'm not sure what the blank is. I'm going to assume the blank is C and come back. But it could be an O as well. Both of them would make sense. Unfortunately, I'm not able to know that until plays are made. I'll come back in the future if it's something different. But Josh with over a 100-point lead here. Again, I can't see Jackson's 6th tile. I think it's an I. But this could be wrong. Jackson plays Zaire, creating a second spot for his S. You can kind of see now why he might want to keep the S. Like that's a good spot for the S, but his rack is kind of blown up a little bit. Jock's with the X. The Y now functioning as a vowel, as it generally does in the game of Scrabble. The T that was created for Jackson now is going to come into play, but now Josh has it. Josh drew it after his last play, which makes a lot of sense. So Jackson was correct in sort of assuming that Josh didn't have a T, but it doesn't necessarily matter. Just because he doesn't have the T now doesn't mean he won't draw one. Josh playing aptly makes a lot of sense. He is going to be looking for spots to maximize the use of his X. Because he's ahead, you're generally going to want to be maximizing and focusing on making the most of your tiles and taking as few risks as possible. And plays that set up the X generally do both of those pretty well. Yeah, Jackson with Loeb. Again, setting up the spot. He, again, could use the S, but is doing it mostly for consonant rack balance, a little bit for the second Zaire spot, so that he can have a higher scoring bingo if it does end up drawing one. Josh with the second blank, and things are looking pretty dire. He has Oxford on his rack, I believe, if that's an O, and I think it is. Yeah, that looks like... I can't see for sure, but I think that's an O, and if so, then Oxford's going to come down. And or Frond even, but most likely Oxford. Yeah, that's. I was assuming so. I wasn't 100% sure if that was an O or a Q, but it looks like an O. So I expect Oxford to come down. Even if Frond comes down, it's looking pretty bleak for Jackson at this point. Yeah, okay. So Frond does come down. So 150 point lead for Josh with the blank and the X. There are no X spots now, but again, I expect one to get created. It's all relevant. Jackson's still without a bingo. Kind of the time usually that you try to open triple triples and hope, because things are not looking particularly good for you winning this game on without shenanigans. You could do things. It's not even really a good option here to create anything. Anything that scores well creates some sort of line. IS just is going to get immediately blocked. Ozier, that's going to create some hooks that are going to get immediately taken or blocked. Now's the time to now is the time to phony WTF. Like, this is kind of when you try to start phoning, and even if it doesn't work that often, you should probably still be doing it. I don't even see any good phonies, to be honest. If the E were one spot down, I would try Osiris, which is Collins. Yeah, pretty. Scrabble is a very difficult game to win when you draw neither blank. It's just always been the case with Scrabble. If you draw both blanks, you probably win. Unless you go too far out of the way to try to draw them. But yeah, I don't even see any option that I think is even okay. Maybe, gosh, maybe just dropping the I guess. The thing is that even if Jackson drops the I and bingos twice, he's still losing. He has to bingo 3 times. Even after 3 times, he might be losing after Sadi. Like, at 5 and then 70, 70, 70. That's 215 points. Josh will have 3 turns. Josh will still be ahead, probably, after 3 bingos. So that's obviously never a good sign. And in reality, Josh is the X and the blank. So yeah, this is pretty much over. This is kind of the part of the commentary where I ask people how they're doing and what they had for lunch. This is the case for resignations, especially in these sorts of tournaments. I agree. Although if spread weren't a factor in tournaments, I would start making like plays that people would find very funny. Not just that, but like, yeah, offer him a draw. Nice. What kind of chill? Oh, you're a vegetarian now, right, Muffin? So vegetarian chili, I presume. Plays OI for 5. Oh, you're not vegetarian, but it is vegetarian chili. Good to know. I've actually never had vegetarian chili. What do you do to flavor vegetarian chili? Like, I'm used to making chili, and it's always like pork fat in some way, or like some sort of fat that is meat. And there's always like ground beef or something like that. Um, use light bulbs. Lots of beans and veggies and oh, it's just spices. Okay. It doesn't come out very similar to regular chili, but still claw it back. Okay, that's cool. Jackson is not making a comeback. If you want me to actually like, yeah, Jackson's not making a comeback. This game is over. I'm sorry if I'm being a bad commentator by saying this, but the game is just over. Even if Josh doesn't find out face, the game is over. Yeah, I know. I'm an amazing commentator. But yeah. So it's more like almost a curry kind of chili thing, which is cool. Like that's actually sounds really good. I might have to think about making something like that one day. So the stream is almost this is kind of like a vegetarian place. Four players are actually vegetarians. And the fourth one isn't a vegetarian, but is experimented with vegetarianism and mostly eats vegetable-y things. Yeah, because of the tie, the spread is definitely a thing. Josh is ahead in spread by 3 points right now. So Jackson's gonna definitely gonna care about the spread. Josh maybe not so much because Josh is pretty much eliminated. The fourth one is Jackson. Jackson is not officially a vegetarian, but largely vegetarian in a lot of the things and was a vegetarian for a period of time. Everybody else, Adam. Everybody else is vegetarian. But yeah, Josh probably thinking about various hot face types of things. Yeah, WTF started the trend. I tried vegetarian in college for like 6 months. It was not bad. It was mostly because I couldn't cook, and my college basically couldn't cook meat. They would undercook meat, overcook meat, wouldn't follow sanitation regulations. So if you ate meat, there was a chance you get sick, and meat didn't taste particularly good either. And a lot of them were vegetarians, so and all things being equal, I might be vegetarian. So I tried it for a little while. Not really for ethical reasons, mostly just for practical reasons. The price of groceries in Ontario is forcing you to vegetarianism. Yeah, that's true. Pork is always cheap, though, I would assume. I don't know if it's cheap in Canada, but it's cheap in the United States, at least, constantly, pretty much no matter where you are. Yeah, a little bit of meat here and there is nice, especially if like I tried to, here comes Outface. Um, Not cheap anymore. Still relatively cheap for where I am anyway. I guess if you're in a major metropolitan city, it may not be that cheap anymore. But generally, you could still get it for, depending on the cut, I guess. Pork chops might not be cheap, but like pork butt generally, you might have to buy a lot of it and freeze it, but generally pretty cheap still. Pork shoulder. Steak is not cheap, for example. Even ground beef is not that cheap anymore, even though it used to be. So Jackson getting a bingo and then a 60-point play and still not even being remotely in the match or in the game. His winning chances went up from 0 to 0.1. I think 0.1 is generous. I'm rounding up. By 0.1, I mostly mean like 0.0001. Maybe if Jackson drew another bingo, I would actually start giving him some chances, but he didn't. Maybe if Josh plays 3 consecutive phonies. Probably not even then. And I don't think it's gonna happen. It's he has the S. He's just gonna play something like Scent or something silly. So yeah. Maybe if Jackson opens a triple triple and Josh phonies, and then Jackson plays a triple triple. That's kind of his outs. But in general, I would be resigning. I'm a big fan of resigning. I think it should happen more often. I can't imagine anybody in the right mind would want to play me in a tournament where I want to resign, because I just play stupid. It's more fun to play stupid, to be honest, as well. It's just more fun. Josh playing ENG because he has the case S. That's more thought than I would be willing to expend, given that they've played 30 games of Scrabble in a meaningless game, but probably the correct play. Not sure what that 7 tile is on the side. I mean, I guess it's an E, but I don't know for sure. No, it's an A, I guess. Even that to me is a sign that Jackson's kind of getting up in the game because he can play for Oik for more points and just doesn't really look. It's the wrong hook, but it's the wrong hook out of disinterest rather than out of ability, if that makes any sense. I'm pretty sure if this game were 100 points, or 50 points closer, Jackson would have seen the correct hook. But, yeah. I'm not good at keeping the drama in a game that doesn't have drama. So yeah, as long as Josh doesn't score like 10 points and empty the bag, he should be fine. So, but Josh likes to keep trying. There are the triers and the giver uppers. I am a giver upper. I'm not afraid to phrase it that way. Jackson counting tiles. I don't know why. What do you guys think about this yellow tiles on this like brown board? I'm not a fan. I think we need to. Quitters never win. Yes, but people who try in hopeless situations never win either. That's the thing. And in a game like Scrabble that's repeated, where you can waste your effort, or spend your effort on other situations that do have a payout, I would prefer to use my effort in other spots. You don't mind the tiles? Okay. Maybe I just have a thing against yellow. I'm an anti-yellow. Anti-yellower. Oh, you're anti-red. Yeah, what are your least favorite colors? I know that people ask all the time, like, what's your favorite color? What is your least favorite color? Um, and you're not allowed to say purple because Churro's in chat. There are some colors I'm not a fan of, like burnt brown colors I don't really like. Anti-banana was never relevant. So, anti-banana comes from a concept by a longtime player who hasn't played in a decade named Mark Landsberg. Mark Landsberg was actually one of the people who got me to play Scrabble more inadvertently, because Mark Landsberg adamantly believed there was no strategy in the game and would tell people this openly and drove me friggin' bananas by doing so. But yeah, the first time I played him, he's just like, "Oh yeah, Mark likes to pretend like he's the best player of all time." And I played him the first time, and I was a bad player when I played him, and I knew I was a bad player. Um, and he would just be like, "Oh, well, I'm a really, really good player," and then I play him, and I'm just like, "You suck." Like, there's no other way to play it. Like, you're just terrible, Mark. Like, so it was kind of like what made me realize that maybe I was okay at the game was the fact that somebody who thought they were really good at the game was just awful. Even Bites, like nowadays he would be probably, I don't know, but yeah, um, Jerry was somebody who constantly thought I was not any good. I was not any good back then. Back, when I started playing, I was not a good player. I was consistently making pretty bad plays. Um, but yeah, I didn't know how I won a single game back then. I would openly tell people that. Like, I played in Division One for 2 or 3 years, and just be like, "How am I winning a single game?" And I wouldn't say anything. Like, I would just be there, be quiet, and just be like, "I can't say anything because I'm not qualified to say anything." But I felt, even though I didn't say it openly, I felt very much to know that as little as I knew that some of the players who are old school players who've been playing for a long time, who thought they were good, had no idea what they were doing. Um, Kind of like some other games. There are other games where that is a thing.
Yeah. Huh? Wait, 457? 457?
Oh, 401?
Yeah. Oh, there's 10 for TE.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not on
I mean, physics back in 2000, 2002, like there were no players virtually who had any idea what they were doing.
100%
I think that should just be common sense now. There are other games like that too. It's not just Scrabble. Like,
Yeah.
computers weren't invented
And
yet. When
reading
computers
physics.
haven't been invented, people didn't know what to do, and there was no real means of analysis. And even if there were means of analysis, most of the people
Yeah,
who were good at that time were experienced players who didn't want to
Would you?
/ know how to use the computer
I
effectively.
draw a blank.
Huh.
I
Man,
didn't even see any
So
eights.
really?
because of that, there's not really,
I saw rumba-ing.
they just didn't know. It's not their fault. It's not like they're stupid. It's just that they were so used to learning through experience that finding a different way to learn
Huh.
didn't make much sense.
Didn't see Halmir?
Yeah, it's amazing that chess has developed a lot,
Which don't
poker's
feel the
developed a
best
lot,
when we put a C or an O.
Scrabble's developed quite a bit.
But it's.
I mean, it makes the most sense, right?
Yeah, I think it's okay. Oh, can we open the top? More?
I don't know if there's a game that hasn't developed a lot since computers and engines and things like that have been available. And even though Scrabble's engines aren't really all that advanced, it still helped a lot. And it will, if engines get developed that are good, it'll be even more, such to the point that humans can't win anymore. I know that as soon as we get a reasonable engine, that I will immediately abandon and restart almost everything. High level classical chess is really boring now. I don't know if that's necessarily the case.
Oh, that's the.
It's also interesting what people find boring. I think it depends mostly on what people are capable of understanding and what is not intuitive or what is
It was
against
talked about in Everything Scrabble.
uh,
Mark Lang's
what
he made a
convention
dictionary, or he believed that
dictates.
dictionary should have
Like, a lot of people think I'm a really creative player. I think I'm a very boring player. I just come up with lines that a lot of people don't come up with that are
or maybe it's in Word.
very mundane to me because the way that I think dictates that I come up with those lines consistently.
Okay.
Oh, I need to fix my thing. Wait.
But I would consider myself a pretty boring player when it comes to like the options that I choose and the reasons that I choose them. I just basically follow a pretty rote pattern. It's a complicated pattern, but it's pretty rote, and I don't need to deviate that often because there are very few players that I need to deviate. How many more are they playing? They're playing first to 6. So as soon as one of them gets to 6 wins, then they're playing. So at least 3 more and likely 4 more. I need to write my system for Scrabble. I mean, 95% of what I do, WTF, is in the book that I wrote. Like, there are very few things that I do that are adaptations to that. There are some things, but where did they both score 6? Well, they'll both score 5.5. It's best to 11. If so, it goes down to spread. Josh being ahead on spread by roughly 150 at this point. I don't see what's wrong with draw death. I don't have the same problem with it that you guys have, I guess, if games go to draws pretty quickly. Well, it's not that unlikely, Tudosky, because it's 3.5 and 3.5 now. So it started out as unlikely, but 2-2 is going to happen probably a good third of the time between these two players. Okay, Jackson with Woeful GS. Why is that a problem, Physics? Josh with a pretty strong bingo rack. Maybe I'm just too much of a spike. I don't see a problem with that. With starting with 11 draws with the same opening. Yeah, what's the problem with that too, Physics? I don't have a problem with football teams stalling the whole game so that because they think they have an advantage in shootouts. If they think they're advantages in shootouts and they don't think they have any advantage on the field, what's wrong with that? Maybe it's boring to watch, I guess. But other teams can adapt to that, obviously. Josh plays Melanic. Oh, he played vertically. This is of the utmost importance to Josh, so. Well, I want players and teams who are trying to win, and if that's the best way for them to win, I have no problem with them doing it. Okay, but I could say the same thing about almost every game in sport. Jackson playing adjusted. He could score a few more, but it makes the board a lot more dangerous. So, I think I'm okay with this. Josh is going to bingo back. Well, I could imagine if things got decided by, let's say, a speed game at the end, and I might be okay with that too. Like, if ties got decided by a speed game at the end of the tournament, I don't think I'd have a problem with that. Begonias comes down. Yeah, people are going to be like, oh, this is such an exciting game. Look, 30 bingo, bingo, bingo. And then, gonna probably be a bingo pretty soon by Jackson.
Yeah,
Skull shoot a flick tiles at your opponent's mouth.
I'll show them that one.
84. What?
Want to show them that blank?
84.
So Jackson bingos.
This is what people can't receive.
Yep.
Did you commentate?
Yeah.
Okay, well, then.
You're absolutely right, Jackson. My commentary is pretty quiet. Word game Olympiad. But yeah, this is how it's gonna start. Bingo, bango, 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 bango. Lots of action,
75.
lots of excitement because lots of points, not lots of decision making. Pretty much every single play this entire game has been forced. So to me, this is kind of just like it falls on your lap. But it is exciting in terms of like if anybody screws up, it's a major screw up. Jackson's obviously going to score 60 here. But yeah, other people may have more like, oh my gosh, is Josh going to draw another bingo? Is it going to happen? Are we going to see a 500 to 500 game? Is it going to happen? This is the play, this is the world-class play that we're used to seeing. And I'm like, this is what happens when two mediocre players play because every single play has been forced and every single play has been automatic. Because that's honestly what's happened from like an analytical point of view. I think that almost everybody in chat could have made all of these plays correctly. So I struggle to get hyped. I get much more hyped when I see a game that's like 350 to 330. Like to me, those are just much more interesting. But yeah, first decision of the game here. See, like this to me, I find much more interesting. This is the first position of the game that actually has relevant options. So we have With, Riot, mostly just those two plays. There's some other options that are pretty similar, but there are decisions to be made here. And you might get 25% of these on good day. I mean, that's fair. These are not common words. So, from a word finding perspective, that they might be pretty difficult. I mean, begonias, melanic, not exactly easy to find. Unshaven even isn't. You have to have the blankets of you. Not that easy. But for players at this level, I think it would be considered a disaster to be missing these. I think. You just assume that they find them, and if they miss them, I rag on them for it because it's just expected that anybody at this quality of play would find these literally 100 times out of 100. But yeah, Josh can elect to either keep more scoring tiles with Riot, or you can elect to play one of them off of With. Not going to bingo a heck of a lot here. The Melanics hook is relevant and is going to either be taken for a huge score or just left there most of the time. So that is part of the issue. FLW, not exactly the greatest after Riot. Like, where does FLW play? Not anywhere great. So kind of leads me to go with With. I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, FLOR isn't exactly great either, but it does bingo much more and or lead to a bingo much more. Josh does go with. Tend to agree.
Old.
Okay, Jackson with Noogie. Not a word. Is that even Collins? I doubt it. I mean, I don't know. It could be Collins. Is it Collins? Nope. could be Collins. I have no idea what's Collins. I would just assume everything's Collins. There's stuff like Boogie and stuff like that, but yeah, there's no Nookie. So it comes off. So Josh now up 3, but with a pretty bad rack. You can get rid of 2 of his R's. That's the main objective, is to get rid of R's. So you're looking for plays that get rid of at least 2 of them, and hopefully the F as well. So not that many plays that accomplish that. There's Pharaoh and Friar. You know that your opponent has Nooy. So because of that, you may make plays a little bit differently. Okay, he does play Friar pretty quickly. I might have thought a little bit more just to think about what works and doesn't work with with what Jackson has. I'm gonna assume Jackson doesn't have a second N. I don't know what the tile that he has is, but I think he would have found Ranyan. So I'm not sure what that other tile is on Jackson's rack. All right, Jackson plays Ebony.
279 272.
Yeah.
Josh draws a second blank. Again, there's not really a rush to play this blank down. You don't need to sacrifice points to get this blank down next turn. You can get this blank down pretty much anytime within the rest of the game, and there's 40 tiles left. So as long as you bingo eventually, there's not really a rush into trying to clear the rack as fast as possible. You don't have to do something like Hilloa that's just a little bit too needy to try to bingo right away. You can bingo in 2 or 3 turns and still be okay with it. So you can take your time and play something like High, which isn't going to bingo next turn almost ever, but doesn't really matter because you don't need to bingo next turn. You can bingo later. So High or Li, perfectly fine options. You can play Hilloa if you really want to, but it's not needed. I think people overemphasize the need to like bingo like next turn. And yeah, bingo next turn would be nice. It's not so nice that you need to sacrifice your entire rack to try to make sure that, or to make that as likely as possible. You can win this game without bingoing ever if you want to or need to. And you don't need to open the board either. There's no need to create another bingo line. I know that the bingo lines here aren't very good. It's a C in Melanic and the S hook on Melanix, basically, and the A in Agisted. But why create another one? There's not really a reason to. Maybe if you fall behind and Jackson starts closing the Melanix stuff, then you might have to think about it. But that's a lot of scenarios that have to happen together, none of which have happened yet. Both players plenty of time, just thinking and weighing their options. Josh might think about playing Hall as well, just to create some spot for his O. I mean, that does create bingo lines. It's better than Haloa, I guess. I probably would still be taking one of the higher scoring plays that unduplicates the L and does something in a more, yeah. But it is an option. Josh really taking his time here. Hala, yeah, you could play Hala. I think I would prefer Hello over Hala just because it leaves fewer overlaps and gets driven high. Josh does elect to go with high. I think that's a very good play. Jackson with the K. Two different approaches here as to what you can do with the K. You can either go all in aggressive, open the board, duel with Renot, or you could play a little bit more cautious and defensive with Ketone. Pretty close decision, if I'm being honest. Renot obviously scores more points, has a better leave. You're up against a pretty decent range. The last three plays were with Friar and HI, which means Josh's range is not necessarily amazing, but above average. Or you could play Carotene for the loss.
38.
He has played Ketone pretty quickly. It probably would be the line that I would go with, but I'm not sure. Lots to think about on these sorts of turns. The thing is yeah, Josh is more likely to have a blank, but if Josh has a blank, you're probably not winning that often anyway. And he's not likely to have like some super premium rack. He's not gonna have like AERST type of stuff that often. And his rack, even though it could be toned to be pretty strong, isn't necessarily. So most of his strong racks contain a blank, and again, if he has a blank, you're probably not winning. So that's kind of the argument for Renot. Ketone, on the other hand, just standard safe, makes Josh a little bit more feeling like he needs to open. Josh with a few bingos here. Not necessarily the easiest to see. Roselle is probably the easiest to see with Melanix. Crafty had no idea. I have no idea. Also has Collager, Cordell. Collager definitely being the better of those options, I think. You don't necessarily want to throw stuff in space, so Roselle, if he sees it, is going to be the best play, almost for sure. You don't want to throw, Collager throws, you have an S-hook now, an E and an R out in space. He does end up playing it. This does have risks to it, for sure. I believe Jackson has imparted here. I think that's his rack. So he has imparted, which I'm pretty sure he's going to see. Again, Roselle would have prevented this. So I think that Collager was an error. Not a huge error. It's not that easy to see Roselle either. But I do think impart to come down, and I think that's a pretty major blunder by Josh.
388, 375.
So kind of one major blunder for both of them in this game so far.
Yeah.
That being said, Josh still being a pretty heavy favorite, especially after that draw. Pre-admit, good. I don't think pre-admit plays. It's a word, but I don't think it's plays anywhere.
That might be very interesting. 73.
Josh draws rotated. That should pretty much do it. I can't imagine Jackson's going to draw anything nearly good enough. Yeah, that's not good enough. There are still 4 tiles in the bag, so you can probably look for some outs. It's going to be very hard to come up with outs on this sort of draw. Best play is probably Jura, getting rid of the U. There are U's left in the bag, so it's going to be very difficult to find anything that actually plays. with any of the U's because you have to draw not just a U but a spot and have Josh draw all sorts of Drek. Getting pretty hard, but it's still probably your best option out of not anything good. Other options, you can play Quare, play Vera. You're basically looking for like what is the perfect draw. And the pool is, from Jackson's perspective, EDGI. That's the pool from Jackson's perspective. So basically, you're just, if you're in Jackson's shoes, you're assuming you're going to draw the S. You're assuming that you're going to draw probably the I as well, maybe? Or the U, whatever tiles that you need, maybe the N. But you're basically just assuming you're going to draw perfectly and your opponent draws as terribly as possible. So something like Quare maybe is going to assume that you just draw unsquare. That might be some possibility, but you have to draw all UNS, and that's not likely. Jura, what are you hoping to draw, Jura? I mean, Q EVC with Jura. So you need to draw the U, obviously. And the S. So you're basically hoping to draw SUQ, I guess. So you're hoping to play Jura, and then you're hoping to draw SUQ in this spot. That's basically your outs with Jura. We can see that that's not going to happen, but that does look plausible from Jackson's perspective. Even that might not be enough to win. That's 57 and then 48, and then you still have the J that you have to play through. So you need to draw the U, and you need Josh to draw nothing. A lot of combos, but you're behind by 64, and you're not going to be able to bingo, so you need a lot of combos. Yeah, I don't see the same sorts of outs with other racks. Java, and then draw. I don't really know. You're always going to assume that if you leave the R open, it's going to get taken, so you're not even looking to the R. Yeah, I don't think there's any outs with Java at all. So I think really your best option is just going to be Jura and trying to draw SUQ. We can see that Josh has both U's, but so it's not going to work out. Jackson does have Java lined up. He has his time here. He can take quite a while to look for the outs, and I actually expect him to. This is one of those turns that you take 6 or 7 minutes on, just to like permute through all the possible draws. You're going through the O. You're going through. What's the blank? The blank is a G for collager and a U for unshaven. No 14 letter. Yeah, no 14 letter is going to save you. Not a lot is going to save you pure. If one of the U's were in the bag and Josh had, let's say, an O instead of a U, he actually might be able to find some. There actually might be some outs here. But yeah. You would also be looking for setups with the S that you wanted to theoretically draw, but I don't even see one of those. Like, you're gonna have to assume that you draw the S here 100% of the time. So you're gonna play like you have it, even though you don't. But I don't even see any way to do that well. Maybe Quaver and hope for both the S and the Y to be in the bag? I guess that's possible. Even then, though, are you winning? Like, if SY is in the bag after Quaver, are you actually winning this game? I think not. So I don't think that's an option. Jackson does play Jura. All right. Josh needs to play around the Q being drawn. So he's going to make a play that makes it... He's going to use almost all of his time here, I think, or he should. Just to make sure that he has some options in case he draws the Q. And there aren't many of them. Because if he doesn't draw the Q, he just wins, probably. Jackson's in that QI, but you're not going to care about that. So one of the things you do is you basically play with the Q, and you just say, okay, what am I drawing? So with the Q, you don't have much. You have Quay, you have QI, obviously. Yeah, you don't actually have much. So this is actually a pretty dicey situation for Josh. You need to set up a Q spot, hopefully, or do something like that, such that you can win with the Q. And there ain't much that does that well. Yeah, this is actually pretty tricky. I guess you could just play Yob and outrun. So if you play Yob, you draw the Q, you either play QI next turn or Quag next turn. Then Jackson's gonna play Covens, and you're gonna lose. I think. Yeah, there's one in the back. The pool is. Let me give you the pool. So I'm not seeing an out for Josh if he draws the Q actually at all. Like I'm not seeing a good play. He may have to assume Jackson just has the Q. Because Yob is gonna put him up by 45. Covens is gonna put him up by or down by 8, 9, 10. Covens is gonna leave him up 2. Quag is gonna leave him up 16. So Jackson would need to score 12 with the D. Maybe he can't. Yeah, maybe he can't actually. So I think Yob is gonna barely outrun. There might be something better than Covens though. Dovens and the C. Yeah, and maybe he barely holds on here. The D drop here for 3, setting up stuff. I mean, I could play all of these out. D. D leaves 2 spots for Covens. So it's gonna be on 40. Yeah, no, I think Josh barely covers after Yob. Barely. Like by about 3. So I don't think Bug is gonna do it though. I think or Buggy. Buggy takes out his Q spot. If he plays Buggy and then draws the Q, Jackson's gonna block QI theoretically, and then Josh would have no outs. So that's not the line. Or rather, that's not the line if the Q is in the bag. Honestly, might have some trouble even if the Q is not in the bag. Like with what Jackson has, actually. Buggy and then Bowie bid. Up, yeah? I don't see it. Oh, you're just talking about other options. B-O-Y. Yeah. But Bowie actually leaves 2 spots to the Q. I don't know if that outruns, though. I don't know if that outruns the Q. Does that outrun the Q? Let's see. 30. Covens is 40. Yeah, that doesn't outrun the Q. Because that's just gonna be QI next turn. So yeah, that's gonna outrun that is gonna outrun everything else that's not the Q, I think. Bowie, the worst draw is GIU, so other than the Q, The next worst draw is the C. So assuming that Josh draws the C, he's going to be up 37. QI is going to come down with Dovins being threatened. He's going to drop the G. After he drops the G, Dovins plays Dev. Actually, a little bit worried. Yeah, I think Josh can't really worry about the Q anymore. He's got to worry about other things that could lose. And he can lose with like C draws. He can lose with a V draw. He's got to worry about that more than anything. Yob is obviously going to outrun even the Q. So I think that's definitely the play. Just do that and then hope to outrun. And should be able to. But yeah, Buoy, the problem is that it's going to leave stuff like Dev after QI. So that doesn't work out very well. The play has to be Yob. I'm pretty certain that the play is Yob at this point. I would have played it by now. I don't think his options are very good. But this is Josh is doing exactly the way that you should be thinking about this game. He's spending all of his time on this turn, and then the rest of the play is just automatic. So he's already calculated what he's going to do with all of these draws. The worst draw being the C, probably, besides the Q. He's going to be pretty relieved to see the D in the bag. Although the D isn't that great either, but it's good enough. But yeah, it's going to come down Yob, and then I think he's better off playing Covens first. Oh, he's changing his mind. He might be in trouble if he plays anything else, given the D in the bag. Like, that's actually going to be pretty bad, potentially. I don't even know what he's thinking about playing. Oh, he's playing Buggy. This could work out pretty badly. Okay. I think he might be okay with the D, but I don't know if he wins with the C at all. Luckily, he does have to play QI, because Coven's Q. So he did block his other QI spot, so Jackson can't play Covens first. He has to play QI first, and then it's going to get blocked. That being said, this isn't a lock by any stretch of the imagination. Josh does have to leave himself an out as well. Does he have an O out with OU? He is out. Okay. And U. Okay. He should be okay then. Oh, he has Sukes. I didn't even see that. And Covens. Okay, Jackson plays QI pretty quickly. I don't really see the line yet, but so Josh has 2 outs now. Maybe there was some options that Jackson could have done a little bit more. He probably calculated all of this already though. But I don't think there's any real, yeah, there's no real options here. He just loses. I don't think Josh had a win with certain tiles after Buggy, specifically the C and the Q, obviously. But yeah, Jackson's best play is just stuff like Coves, which just isn't good enough. And Josh isn't missing both you and if Josh didn't have an out, that best play here would actually be pretty fun. It would actually be OS for 2, setting up Cohen. So if Josh didn't have a second spot, like if he didn't see YOU, for example, and he only had one spot, this would actually theoretically maybe win the game. But Josh is 2 out, so the game's over. Josh has OU on his rack, and OU plays in 2 spots. Both of which he's going to see. Yeah, I don't think that was much Jackson. Jackson couldn't have really done much here, I don't think. The best option for Jackson, honestly, is probably to try to trick Josh into not seeing Sooks and blocking the queue. With Josh's time trouble, that might be an out. So if we go back a little bit, like, can't play that, can't play that, can't play that, can't play anything like that. Maybe Cave? Let's see, Cave, and then maybe Josh plays something like, I don't know, Oda. This probably still doesn't win. Yeah, this probably still doesn't win. QI comes down. I don't know, some line like this is probably Jackson's best hope. Yeah, it was mostly good play by both players. There were some mistakes in this game for sure. The game got more interesting later, at least the way that I think of it, but yeah. Stream's lagging. Not sure what's going on, but I'm sure they'll be back in a minute, guys. Yeah. I don't really know what Jackson's thinking about. I'm pretty sure that Jackson sees both outs. Even if OS comes down, and Josh doesn't find his out, he's still winning at this score. That's just his best endgame. Wins by a little bit, but I would be very tempted in Josh's shoes just to be like, I have OU, I have you and out. What are you doing? Like, I'm always tempted to be making these sorts of situations when I don't understand why my opponent's thinking for so long. Like, there's nothing to think about here. You just play coves and move on. You can't win. You can't even attempt to steal. It's not going to happen. Maybe Jackson's mistracked and he thinks Josh has like UI. I mean, that's the only thing that makes any sense here. Otherwise, he would have played already. So I'm assuming Jackson mistracked, because otherwise this doesn't make any sense. That's an excellent example of a Collins word, Will. Those are excellent examples. This is what we have to look forward to. When the world gets consumed by Collins in 2035, this is what we have to look forward to. And by 2035, I mean it's going to happen before then, almost for sure. We have look forward to Room, ROUM, and ROWME. Romy.
No, actually, no. Spread is the thing. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, spread is a thing, I
I mean,
guess.
it could have been you're just trying to
I mean,
win if I miss it.
Yeah.
Right. That could just be you trying to win. Oh my god, I don't think Buggy was right.
It's not, Josh. Josh talking post-morteming thinks he doesn't think Buggy is right. He's correct, it's
That was
not.
the only thing I actually like looked at exhaustively, basically. Where you have to play your Q, you're getting stuck. And once you play it, I can just block.
Because if I have the D, do I have another Q spot?
No,
Don't I
I was
always
just
have to play
worried.
the-
I was worried about getting outscored. Like I couldn't find many out sequences if I drew the V, for example.
Okay.
Like I was really freaking out about.
Yeah, I mean,
this strat.
the V, I can imagine you can.
So they're post-morteming in the game.
As well.
I don't
Yeah,
think you guys
so
can hear the stream, but yeah.
I was looking at like a bunch of stuff, and I didn't really have time. Like this doesn't even block, right? So like I was looking at this.
Joel, I wouldn't say if I did on stream, but the answer is no. I have no info to that.
This, and you can block Ivy
Capacity.
Vin. And I couldn't see anything else.
Yeah.
But if it were, I couldn't tell you.
Winning it. Couldn't calculate the time.
Yeah.
I'm winning. I mean, Collager is good, right? So
yeah.
Fair. And Melanix is good, right?
Yeah.
Mescaline. Yeah. So I don't see a way to win here.
That being said, it's certainly possible. Okay, you can hear them.
I could just do this. Oh, I hope I would have seen that.
Yeah.
Oh, I only saw it here after looking. I think I still win with the B then.
Honestly, Joel, I don't have intel with that regard, but I do have stuff that suggests that
if you don't play
that would make some sense given some other things that I know.
Yeah.
So I don't
but no, I don't know that.
Your last look.
I think I'm losing.
Talk to some people privately, Joel. you know you have lots of friends in the game who would know these things.
So it's 7 out of 8. I don't know.
But yeah, Wander's in chat. Maybe he'll talk to you about it. Other New Yorkers.
Or I was thinking that at least.
I think that makes sense, yeah.
What's the spread between you guys?
Now it is about 50.
For Josh?
Yeah, for Josh.
And he's up 4-3-1?
He's up 4-3-1, yeah.
Alright, cool. Should we just finish the series even if it goes like 2 or 3 more games? If it gets to like 5-4 or 5-5, potentially we could think about streaming. I don't know.
Yeah, wait, you just played around 6?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you played we're 2 ahead of you now.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Wait, what's the game? Yeah. Yeah, so I guess if it gets to that point, we might actually be able to just stream all of their games and the rest of our games. We'll see what happens. Yeah, for now we should just continue, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Have fun, guys.
You too.
Oh yeah, no, Josh, we've been able to hear you the whole time. I didn't calculate the V, Josh, but I'm pretty sure it wins both the C and the Q. I did calculate Yob for C and Q. And they both hold barely. The V, just looking briefly. Yob, Vug, Vig, So it'll be the Q and then second slash codons. So you'd block. And then what? Deacons as an outplay? That doesn't win.
Yob looked better.
Yeah.
I think the V
So many
holds. Let's see.
Instead of
Buggy.
Yeah.
No, I don't get Q strike.
okay.
Oh, it loses by 2. Okay. So it doesn't hold the V.
Yob doesn't hold with the V. Never mind. So both look like a 7 and 8. A bit smaller. Sid won their game.
Yeah.
Oh, you can look at it later. It's not that important. All right, so Josh up 4.5 to 3.5. I'm gonna take a quick break. It won't take very long.
8 bingos.
8 bingo?